Hello and welcome back to The Game Pit. My name's Sean and this is episode 148. And Ronan, we're back to our Pit Spit format.
We are indeed, Sean. We have a plethora of games to go through. And as usual, we have not both played all of these games. I've played all the ones I'm going to introduce. Sean's played all the ones he's introduced. But we have played some of them. Either we both have a copy, or Sean, we are in the rare and sort of lucky situation during these times that we do actually get to see each other sometimes.
I wouldn't call that lucky getting to see you, to be fair.
I was trying to be nice to you. Let's explain the situation.
Yeah, so we are both railway workers, and the government has designated us both key workers. I work in the control. Ronan works on the underground, either on the tracks or in the control room. And because of that, I have to travel down to London. I need somewhere to stay, and because I'm a key worker, I get to stay with Ronan. Yay!
You get to stay with me because I took pity on you, not because you're a key worker.
Well,
you had to stay somewhere.
You just sent a photo of me to the government. They're like, yeah, just let him in.
Look at this poor creature. Something must be done for him. So, yeah, getting to go to work even, Sean, and getting out of the house and getting to see part of the world is a relief. I'm genuinely never happier than when I'm getting in the car and taking a little drive through London down to Kensington and getting to actually interact with other people. Genuinely, I think it's what's keeping me sane.
Yeah, I mean, not to rub it into people, it does lift your spirits. But, I mean, again, we were talking the other day, people are just finding ways to be with their family. I'm playing a lot more board games with James. We're playing a lot of Minecraft with James. He's insisting I play on the actual survival Minecraft, which is terrifying.
You're like the anti-Enderman. Anyway, yeah, and we've had Lloyd and Puri on here, but I don't think G is the other member, but the four of us have just started an Arkham Horror card game campaign online. And the lucky thing is all households own a copy of it. So it makes it super easy that we can follow along. We've all got the locations. I just run the encounter deck, and we've only done one so far and we were terrible. We failed. We started the Dunwich cycle, but it was loads of fun, and that's also been a good thing. And it's something we never would have done before. We'd have said, yeah, we'll play Arkham Horror someday, and never actually would the four of us really got together for a campaign. So strangely, it's opened up other opportunities for gaming just in a different way. And, you have to take the positives with that.
Absolutely. Just going back to G, he point blank refuses to come on the show. It's not like we haven't asked him.
He has sound edited with that RPG one we had that we recorded in a proper studio that sounded strangely good.
And he's given us some technical advice in the past.
He has. Put your microphone on a cushion. What? Do a cushion? What? Would it fall over? He was
mine's on a mouse pad at the moment.
Put it on a cushion, man. That's why we get so much background noise from you. I'm shocked. Does G teach you nothing? Okay. Shall we crack on to the games?
Let's do it.
Okay, this is one that both of us have played. It's Paris New Eden from Matago, 2 to 4 players, 45 minutes long, designed by Florian Grenier and Ludovic Malblanc. Strangely enough, it's an apocalyptic setting. I hadn't thought of that until I just read it out there. But this is a vegetation-based apocalypse where suddenly all the greenery has grown wild and taken over Europe and taken over the big cities. The mechanism is that you are doing a dice draft in order to set up your own sort of home base where you're bringing people in for you. And the dice are rolled. They're custom dice, 6 different faces on them that show different types of people. And they're put out on different locations on the board. And every turn you take a die from a location. And not only do you get to keep the dice to use later in the round, but also you get to take the action off the location. What you're going to use those dice for is to basically, you're going to look at different types of buildings. There are 5 different types after everyone's drafted all the dice. And whoever's got the strongest strength in dice plus supplementary tokens you can take if you take dice from a certain area is going to get first choice of however many buildings are available. And unless you're playing 2-player, there are fewer buildings available than there are players in the game. And Sean, I'm going to kick him before I even go through all the rules. But the first point of discussion is that it is a dice drafting game. But to me, and unusually, the dice draft is almost less important when I'm making my decisions than the supplementary action that I get with it.
So when you're drafting a dice rolling, you are really got an eye on the latter part of the round when you're doing the auctions for the buildings, etc. Like the initial hit is trying to get those additional tokens. Like the baseball bat is really important. Trying to get in on the missions is really important. So there's that dual aspect to the game, which initially, when I first saw it being ran through by Rado, etc., and being touted for Essen last year, it really interested me.
So the sort of things that you're thinking about when you're doing that, you are going to be able to get, like I said, extra people, but the extra tokens that you get, the difference in them is that they will hang around, they'll be persistent, and they're going to help you through the rest of the game because the dice that you draft will just go, which is one of the reasons why, yeah, you're thinking about them, but they're not as important because those people that you get that go on, they'll help you in your bid for the building initially, but also they will then go into your hideout and they will be available for missions. Now, there are 3 missions available on each round, and they all require certain sets of equipped people. So the 6 different dice faces show medics, show fighters, and they show farmers, and they show all-rounders and different things. And different missions will want a different combination of those people. Not only does that mean that the dice are not persistent, but it also means that you're building up to score your points, and the point scoring comes from the secondary actions as much as it does from the dice. The funny thing about the scoring is, though, that at the end of each round, you're set either missions to complete and also the ability to feed all the people that you have in all these buildings you've drafted, and by taking tokens, and the buildings have people written on there and pieces of equipment to fulfill the missions. But if you don't do that, unlike in other games, you think of a mission, if I don't do it, I'm going to get punished. In this one, you just don't score points. And feeding at the end of each of the 4 rounds, you don't get punished if you don't feed. And it feels very forgiving but strange. You just score lots of points if you can feed them, Sean. And they've clearly made a deliberate design choice here where we're not going to hit you for not doing things. You're just not going to score as many points.
I think that's one of the ways, Ronan, that this one is really quite unintuitive. When you grasp this, I'm struggling to explain things in this game, and even listening to you, I'm struggling to think back because I've only played the game once, and that one play, I just didn't know what direction to go in. I didn't know where I should be, what dice I should be taking, what tokens I should be taking. Nothing in the game just screams, okay, this is like a normal game. Oh yeah, okay, I'll pick that up from that game, because as you say, you don't get hit for not feeding your people. You don't really know the importance of some of the dice or the auctions, some of the buildings, until you've played it that once. So maybe on my second and third go, I'd start to grasp it, because you and Rachel absolutely doubled my points in the game. But initially, it's a really hard one to grasp.
Is it going to be hard to grasp, though, just because you're expecting it to use the shared gaming language and to follow conventions? Do you think that if you were a new gamer who wasn't as set in their ways as we are, it would be as hard to grasp? Or is it just that you're having to reset what you think you know about games?
I think there is an element of that, Ronan. I think maybe not set in your ways is probably going to be a benefit to this. But I think the game in itself is a little bit of a big step for a new gamer to take. I think there's quite a lot going on there with the auctions and the drafting and the picking the right people and the missions. I think there's a lot thrown in there.
I'm going to pick you up and say, I don't think there's a lot thrown in there. I think it's quite hard to score points.
Okay. Elaborate.
Well, I just think it's quite hard to score points. You have to play well to score points. The missions are quite hard. As you go through the 4 rounds, you require a lot of people who have got equipment. And especially the feeding, although it's non-punishing, it is cutthroat. And you can score a lot of points if you've got enough farmers and cans, because you get cans from a particular area when you draft a die, it comes with a can. If you've got enough of those, you can get a lot of points from it. But it becomes more difficult because inevitably over each round you get more and more people in, you're trying to take buildings, you can do things. One aspect of that I think is the most cutthroat, Sean, is there are very few buildings that have lots of farmers on them. I think there's only one with 3 farmers on. If they come out, if you do not get on them early, because it snowballs and whether you can feed and you're getting more and more people in, you can drop behind in farmers and find it very, very difficult to catch up. And suddenly, I mean, there's only 3 ways of scoring points. It's doing the missions, it's feeding your people, and then it's the cards, which we'll talk about in a sec. If that's one of those, completely out the window if you don't get farmers early.
So, with that in mind, do you think the game is kind of funneled into very few scoring opportunities, and are you going to be doing the same thing over and over again?
I do, but because it's only 45 minutes long, and because you can't really set your path out before you start playing, you can attempt to, but if you suddenly in round one, you look at it and you go, I'm not going to win that big farmer card, right, I now have to concentrate on missions and or possibly on those cards. Because what you do is, there are cards you can draft. Again, you draft them from taking dice from a certain area within the city. You get to take two and choose one. They'll either give you buildings you can build if you have enough of a certain type of person, tinkers, in your setup, or they give you endgame scoring. Now, you can try and rinse those, but all the endgame scoring requires that you have other stuff anyway. So sort of the cards almost tie into the strategy of doing the missions, because often they ask you to have lots of medicine or lots of books, and then the feeding is almost a completely separate strategy. So I think you have to be aware that if I'm not hitting one early, I'm going to have to switch and do the other one. So there are two main paths, but it is a quick game.
You talked about moving on to the sort of the private mission cards. So you've got the public mission goals that I feel, to a smaller degree, I feel like can sort of fall in your lap a little bit. But certainly going through those cards is a very definite strategy, and some of them can just fall nicely in your lap. If you're lucky with the card draw, that can really help.
I think you're right, and it's the same thing with regards to everything throughout the game. If the three missions are available, two are going to get cancelled every round, so one will come in, and you cannot be good in all three areas that might be required for missions. And sometimes the other players will just cancel the missions that you didn't want to do anyway, leaving you free to take other actions. So there are definite ways in which, there are swings and roundabouts, and it can just drop you away sometimes, mate.
The only other thing I want to bring up before we go sum up on this one, Ronan, is I don't think it's for two players. I think I've looked on BGG, there's lots of complaints about the two-player game. Some of the buildings are really overpowered. You've talked about that 3 farmer. If one player gets that and the other player doesn't, maybe that's a sort of they're on a course to victory. The baseball bat is supposed to be quite overpowering in a two-player game, maybe.
So you mentioned the baseball bat. What the baseball bat does is, when you're bidding for buildings or showing who's got the biggest strength of buildings, if you have the baseball bat, which gets drafted by one player every round, you win all ties. So it is very powerful, but the other choices there are to go first in the round, so you get first draft, which is also very powerful. The other choice while you're there is to get the heroine, which automatically covers sort of one part of a mission for you. That does a completely equipped person, which can make the difference for a lot of points. So it's in an area where there's lots of powerful things, but I agree with you that in a two-player game, the baseball bat is going to be crazy. I think this is a strictly 3 or 4 player game.
So for me, Harris, I'm judging this on one play. So although there was enough interest to make me want to just try it one more time, at the moment, all the interest in this game was in the bidding and the guessing what everybody else was after or that would bid when you're bidding for those buildings. The rest of the game I found quite confusing, but also quite bland and a little repetitive. We were going after the same things over and over again, and we had our courses, and it just became a bit much. Even at that 45-minute an hour mark, it still got a little bit boring for me. So not a game that I'm desperate to play again, but I wouldn't mind confirming that I don't particularly like it, Ronan.
I am mildly warmer than you are on it. I think it's decent. I think it's quick. I think it's pleasant. I quite like the aesthetic. It at least looks different. I'm not sure that I love it, but it looks different anyway. It has its own look. The fact that it doesn't follow gaming conventions mean that it's strangely hard to grok. So it can be like a 25-minute learn to play a 45-minute game the first time you play. And then every time you're teaching it, it is slightly hard to teach as well. I think Paris New Eden's worth a try. I think that it will resonate with certain players. I think that of the people I've played it with, I've had one person really like it, a lot of people in the middle, and one person really dislike it. And Sean was one of that melange somewhere in the middle, him slightly more towards the negative end of it, which is perfectly valid. So I wouldn't rush out to play it, but if it was on the table, I'd give it another go.
Cool. And the people on it look like Terrence and Phillip from South Park.
What colour is the wind?
Don't kick the baby. So we are moving on to the new Pretty on the market. It's Tang Garden, designed by Francesco Testini and Pierluca Zizi, coming from Thundergriff Games. The backstory on this one is the Tang dynasty was considered the first golden age of the classical and now iconic Chinese gardens. Players are going to act as imperial garden designers, and they're going to be called on to build the most incredible gardens whilst balancing all the elements of nature. The three main things that you're going to do in Tang Garden: you're going to play a landscape tile, very similar to every other landscape tile laying game you've got to match terrain to terrain and roads to roads and paths to pathway, etc. The terrain in this one are forest, water and rock. You've also got paths that are going to do different things on these, and walls are going to block things in.
That dog's about to kill you, by the way. You should probably look behind you quick and make sure you're safe.
Because blocking things in and filling like an area of forest that is completely surrounded is going to score you extra points and actions. There are also decorations that you're going to place. There are bridges, there are flowers, there are birds and fish, there are trees, and there are pavilions. And they're going to be placed on the board for scoring opportunities later on. Lastly, optionally, if you are able to place a character for end of game points. And this very much depends on where they are looking at, because they want to look at certain landscapes which are placed on the edge of the board. And they also want to look at all the things that you've placed on there for the pavilions and flowers, etc. They're going to score you extra points. The characters also have a dual purpose. They are going to give you an ongoing bonus while you have them. So when you get another character, you make a choice which one goes on the board to score points and which one you're going to keep and to use their ongoing power. Ronan, we're going to start off with the obvious bit. I think even you would have to admit that this is a very beautiful game.
I'm slightly more worried about the fact that dog's going to kill you, but okay, we'll carry on.
Yeah, next door's dog. I've tried to shoot it many times.
Shoot it! Don't shoot the dog.
I have to shoot it. It's the most annoying dog in the history of dogs.
You're coming across really badly here, so I'm going to start talking about war games again.
The other side, I've got an Alsatian. He's beautiful.
Don't.
He'd kill me in a heartbeat.
Okay. It looks amazing. When you get it out of the box, it's a big old box as well. It's a big old lump of a game. When you get it out, it's got all the bits and bobs. It's got a very strong aesthetic. You certainly helps with the feeling that you are in there creating this beautiful garden. And I would say that the whole idea of those gardens, not that I know much about it, is that you're trying to balance all the different things. And that ties through to the scoring and the way you play the game, that you're trying to push all the three elements up, water and forest and earth. And you're trying to, whenever you're scoring with one thing, you have to get more than one of it. So you have to pair up the birds and the fish or the two different types of flower suits. It's all about balance. And I like the fact that they've gone for an aesthetic that ties through into how you score points in it.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't really talk very much about the surroundings. So the surrounding landscape, so you're looking at the vista going on, there's certain things that the characters like to look at. So one of them is an architect and he likes to see his buildings being constructed. The emperor likes to see dragon memorials, so he really likes dragons. I like dragons, and he likes to look at them and in his vista. And there's some really... I like dragons. There's some really interesting ones. Is in the Empress. If she obviously doesn't get along with her husband very well, and he's obviously having an affair with the courtesan because
allegedly.
She gets not. Allegedly, it seems that way because she scores a straight up amount of points, but they get reduced if the emperor or the courtesan are in her line of sight. Which is quite interesting.
Bit better than Knuckles, isn't it? Okay.
And that's a way you can mess with people. Now, I played a 2-player game with Natalie, and I thought, and I said to you, it's kind of like Carcassonne with a few extra bits just thrown in, but it's very, very light and very serene. And you were like, oh, cool. And then we started playing with you and Rachel. Didn't end up being very serene, did it?
You did missell this game to me. Okay. How long does it take to teach Carcassonne?
I don't know, about 5 minutes.
How long does it take to teach Tang Garden?
Well, it took me 2 games.
Okay, but if you were teaching it new, how long would it take to teach Tang Garden?
Good 25 minutes, maybe 20 minutes.
4 or 5 times as long. I don't know where you got the idea was that this is as light as Carcassonne.
Because we played it super. We didn't get in each other's faces. We just kept away from each other. She went in one direction in the garden. I went in another direction, and we just played probably not the game. We just did our own little thing in the corner, which is what we tend to do.
The game is the game. You play it as you wish to play it. There's no one can tell you there's a right or wrong way to play a game. What happened was, you taught me the game, and I looked at it and went, all the points are in the cards, and every time they put down a tile that has a space that I can put something, then that's an opportunity for me to score, because you have to lay the tile, and then everyone else gets a turn. And if you've got a place that a tree can go, guess what? I'm going to rinse the deck and try and get a tree, because then it's close to you and you can't score points with it, because the point scoring for actually laying the tiles is very, very low. You know, you build up, you get a couple of coins here and there. If you get very far along the track, it does give you a chance to change your characters around, but the most of them you can have is like 4, maybe, and then they're scoring you 5 or 10 points each. Whereas if you rinse in the cards, you can score maybe double that. So...
But I think if you're clever with the characters and you don't get messed with, I suppose, then the characters, if you had 3 of them out scoring 15 points a pop, 45 points is way over half.
It's not possible. It's not possible in a multiplayer game to do that, because
yeah, I suppose with the Empress 9, she gets 9 points, and if she's looking at 6,
no, it's not just that. It's that if, say, someone wants to look at waterfalls or whatever, and you're saying, right, I can get 4 or 5 waterfalls on these 5 pieces, you're not going to, because people have to lay landscape tiles. It doesn't cost them anything to put those views into play. As you lay a tile in a certain spot, you then for free put one of those views in play. And obviously, if I'm looking at yours and you like waterfalls and you're looking at 3 waterfalls, guess what's going down next? Not a waterfall. I don't think you can score loads of points of characters. I think there's a limit to what you can do with them.
Yeah, the game in itself is incredibly interactive, because everything that somebody else is doing, you're looking at from, right, what are they getting from it? What can I get from it? And how do I stop it? So you're constantly studying the board.
Yes, and here's the massive problem with the game. Because while we started on the looks, yeah, it looks amazing, but it is so much form over function. It's such
the iconography is hidden.
It's not just the iconography. It's the whole thing is form over function. I can't tell what your characters want. There's no way of telling what the symbols are, because all the symbols are tiny for looking at those views. They're tiny on the views. There is a bit of colour coding with very similar colours in some cases. Like, tell me how close you have to be to tell the difference between the 2 different types of pagodas that you can score.
Oh, yeah, no, that was because the architect wants a pagoda that's being built, and somebody else wants an already built pagoda, and there's a tiny scaffolding, and the iconography is absolutely microscopic.
You're talking like millimetres wide on a big board where people have cards in front of them that... millimetres high icons that are detailed. They're not like a symbology, like a very simple, like an alpha sign or whatever. They're actual tiny pictures of things.
The issue is, I think you have to be quite open about what you're doing, and in the game kind of goes against the spirit, because you've got to be quite sneaky in the game itself. You set things up for yourself, and if you announce, like, my character wants to look at that one there that's on that pile on the top there, so everyone's going to go, well, okay, I'm going to choose that. So I think individual people, you kind of have to go around to everyone and say, well, what does your character want to look at? All right.
You just pick up a piece of scenery and go, do you want any of them? Yes. Great. It's going there. But, and going from that then, the facing of your character. So, okay, they're a figure, you put a face in, there's no arrow or line or anything to show which way they're facing, but you can work out kind of where a figure's facing. Some of them go within cardboard pagodas. Fully within. Firstly, I don't remember they're in there. Secondly, which way are they facing? Is it a secret? What sort of a choice is that? This fella might be scoring no points, might be scoring, like you say, 15 for some features in front of it and things. I don't know. I can't tell. It's just a bad choice for a game component.
It is, yeah. I agree. Like, it is. They've gone for the looks, really, as you said. They've gone for the looks. They haven't really thought about the playability of the components and the iconography, which is a definite It's a definite minus to the game, for sure.
I'm torn on how I feel about this. The games we've played have been pretty tight. The more we've played, the tighter it's got in scoring. It does come down to card draw, to me, for majority of scoring. If you happen to get that fourth or fifth different type of tree as you cycle through the deck, you're going to score a lot of points for that. If you don't, you don't. If you happen towards the end to get a lucky pairing, great. For how long and thinky this is, that's something you have to be aware of.
To a certain degree, but how many different aspects of this game did I accuse you of being lucky at? Like, you can't have been lucky at absolutely everything. I think there's a lot of actual gameplay and being clever about what you do within the game. I think it's not completely down to luck.
Okay, but when players are playing well, on the last round around, if I draw 3 cards and don't get the thing that I need for my pair because the deck has been rinsed by that point, and it goes to the next player and they do get the thing they need for a pair, and that scores them the extra points to win the game,
You're just going back to Rachel wincing you in the last round.
That's true, but it's not something that's that unusual because towards the end, you've kind of done everything you want to do on your board. You're looking at it going, I'm not going to get these 9 extra steps it takes for me to start scoring points or get another character out on the board. So I'm very reluctant to lay landscape tiles towards the end. I am rinsing that deck. And then it becomes a bit of fishing. It becomes a bit of, am I going to get that thing I need which will give me the points before the game runs out?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to note it. For me, I think it's a very tactical game with each tile choice. As I said already, it's an exercise. What can I do for me and what don't I want to do for my opponents? I think it's a clever game. Ronan, I don't know which way you're going to go with this one. So do you want to sum up on Tangarden for us?
Sean, I don't know which way I'm going to go on this one. I really enjoyed playing it. The biggest issue for me, it's not even that card draw, it's the graphic design and the fact that adds to the difficulty of play. It adds that I don't know what people are scoring, and that it is an issue, but it's quite a big issue because it just adds that layer of frustration above all the thinking and all the tactics and all the, suddenly you want that and I want this. You've put down a blue area. Okay, should I go for that or not? The tile laying, again, it reminds me back to Paris that the dice drafting in Paris is almost secondary. The tile laying in this is almost secondary, because it's not how you're going to score the majority of your points. I think that if it had a little bit of streamlining all around and had tidied up the graphic design, it could have been a really big hit because the core of it is a very fine game. It just has those rough edges you need to be aware of. I like it, and I'm happy to play Tangarden again. I don't know after how many plays that frustration would boil over and I go, I've had enough of it. But there's a good few plays in that box for me. So I think it's a hit, Tangarden.
Yeah, I completely and utterly agree with the iconography and the design choices in placing some of those people into the pavilions, etc. But what I get out of the game is that it's a very tactical game. Each tile choice, as I've already said, is an exercise in what I can do for me, but also what don't I want to do for my opponents. So I'm constantly engaged. I think it's a clever game with a lot of beauty, and I think the beauty may hide its mean little heart, but in a good way. I really do enjoy Tangarden, as fiddly as it is.
So the next game we're going to move on to is one of the most discussed games from last year. It's King's Dilemma from Horrible Guild, 3 to 5 players, 60 minutes. Designers Hjalmar Hack and Lorenzo Silva. So King's Dilemma is a game designed to be played over multiple sessions, in which each player takes control of their own noble family, and each session corresponds to the reign of one monarch within this kingdom, and you're attempting over the course of the whole campaign to promote your own family. In terms of mechanism, every round, a card gets revealed, and it's a story card, and it's going to have some sort of a situation on which all the different families are then going to decide they're going to vote on the outcome. The way you vote is with power, and one of the 2 resolutions is going to get more power voted on it, and then we're going to read the result, and there'll be different outcomes from that story card. So it's going to affect how the kingdom is developing. There are tracks for the kingdom for this reign. They mostly reset between reigns, but there's some lingering over of things. You might increase the prosperity or decrease the morale or the agriculture or the military or the religious strength, and there's these different areas going up and down. The story will indicate the possible outcomes, but they'll do it via flavour text. So you're trying to work out when it says. In terms of the voting, you can choose to vote on the either side of the debate, or you can choose to pass. When you pass, you can either claim all the power that was used for the winning vote last time round to power you up, and you split that amongst all the powers who do that. Or you can choose to take the hammer and be the judge. And then if there's ever a tie, you then are going to decide which way it goes. And you decide all things that need deciding from there. And that's where part of the diplomacy comes in, because you can get offers of power and money from the other families to make you go this way or that, depending upon what decisions you have to make before the next story card comes up. Now, in terms of what you're trying to do overall, your family is tied into long-term goals. They have things that they want to happen. So, for example, I played as the agricultural heartland of the kingdom. Therefore, I always wanted to look after agriculture and I wanted to look after trade. And by doing different things, I get to tick off long-term goals on my family, which overall will give me slightly more power each game, will give me special abilities, and will score me points. The other way of scoring points over the course of the game is that you get short-term traits. So for each particular reign, it's as if you have a new head of your family and they have a particular trait to them. They might be particularly greedy, or they might be particularly power-hungry, or they might be particularly religious. So therefore, you've got short-term goals to also complete as these stories are going on. And you're looking to see how much power to spend, what other families to work with at certain times, and what general direction you're trying to steer this in. Now, as you go through the story cards, there are different threads to the story. And you'll open up packs of cards. It comes with dozens of packs of cards. And you'll take them out and you'll shuffle them into the possible story deck. And as you unveil them, the story will develop and the choices you make will lead to different stories coming out. And the kingdom, as I say, will go over particular tracks and down different paths, and different paths will be closed off to you depending on what you've chosen what to do. Okay. Each reign is going to be limited by a certain amount of time. There are cards that come out that have a mortality rate on them. Or if the kingdom ever becomes completely stable, then that monarch retires and says, cool, I'm done, I'll pass it on to whoever's next. Or if it becomes completely unstable, then they get deposed. And depending upon which of those two has happened, or if the monarch has died, then points are going to be handed out in different ways. Now, there are two different ways you score points. You score, I can't remember them, but I think they're called glory points and ambition points. And they're kind of points if you've helped the kingdom generally do well and be a positive place. And then ambition points are if you maybe undermine them a bit, but taken more personal power for your family. There's also things whereby if you have put the most power into a decision, a sticker can go onto the board in a particular element and you have taken responsibility for that decision. And it can end up of having boosted one of these tracks or reduced them, and you've sort of taken ownership. So if I've taken a decision and put most power in there to reduce our military strength will be reduced for the next few games. And when bad things happen on military, if we get invaded, I'll be the one personally to blame, and that I will then suffer some of the penalty for that. So you have to own some of your decisions. The overall scoring for the whole campaign, you don't know what it is. It's going to depend upon how the kingdom has been led. And for each of the 6 different areas, as you get towards the end of the campaign, you have a resolution and you actually put a different scoring sticker into the book. And when all 6 of them are in play, that's going to be the end of the campaign. You will then see how you resolve everything that you've done and whether your glory or ambition points are going to be more valuable or whether it's going to be a balance of them. And therefore, you're trying to read all the way through. And the game all the way through is not so much about making hard mechanical decisions on we need 3 more of these or 1 less of that. You don't know that. You don't know exactly how it's going to end up. And you certainly don't know what futures you're making available to you. It's more about getting a judgment and a feeling and thinking like, hold on, does this sound like a good idea for my area? See, if there's a decision to be made on the northern borders and I'm a central family, maybe I'm not so fussed by that one. Maybe I'll just play that one to get some more power. But if there's a decision that directly affects me or my ports or my trade, maybe that's when I need to come in. But I won't know until we resolve it all. So it's not a game to play mechanically and specifically looking for actual scoring of points each game. Although you are scoring points each game and they will give you glory and ambition, but you don't know how it's going to go. It's much more of a feeling. Sean, a feeling, an experience as much as a game. King's Dilemma.
Okay, so I haven't played this one. I really wasn't interested until all the buzz started around it. Obviously, Tom Vassell was a big exponent of how great it was, and you started playing it, Ronan, and were just talking about. I'm not saying if you liked it or not, but you were talking about it a lot. Doesn't look great, but it does seem to be all about the narratives generated and the choices made.
When you say it doesn't look great, do you mean, go on?
I think it looks quite sparse.
You talk about the actual looks of the game itself.
Yeah. Once you open the box, you don't go, wow. It's probably the opposite of Tangarden. Like, we open Tangarden, you go, oh my God, that's gorgeous. And you look at this one, you go, oh, is that all it is? But I suppose most of the goodness is in those decks of cards, so that's when it all starts to come to life. But
there is some great artwork on those cards, by the way.
Cool. I'm glad to hear it. The one thing that people have said to me about this game is don't play it as if you're a gamer. Play it as if you're a character in the game, because you'll get so much more out of it. How do you respond to that, Ronan? Do you agree, disagree?
It is a solid aye from this party. I vote 5 power for playing as a character and for fun.
And I think Tom Vassler said the same. He's had to make some choices that actually made him a bit sick, because there were things that he completely rebels against in real life. But to stay in character, he had to make those choices.
In all honesty, Sean, there are many differences between me and Tom, and one of them is that when I have to make those choices, I am having a chuckle.
But you make him in real life, though.
Not all the time. Definitely. The players who were playing this and they wanted a clear path on how to win, what's the best tactics, how am I going to win as my family, had the least fun. Now, I think everyone we played with enjoyed it, but they are the ones that possibly, until they got into the flow, were a bit frustrated. And what was quite funny is that we had someone who was getting frustrated with other players, because they're like, why are you doing that? If you look at this track, it does this. And they're like, because that's what my family would do. Because 3 games ago, that person made that decision and my family remembers, and we've got a vendetta, but it's going to cost you points. We have a vendetta. That's where you need to be. And you can almost make it sound like all the decisions are on the players and the players are making the game. The storylines, the developments, the ambiguity, hold on, does that sound like a good idea? But it actually is what my family wants, are really, really well done. And I think one of the things that Tom says is about moral choices. I'm not sure that I would classify these within this setting as a moral choice, but that's kind of the way to describe it. You're going on, is this for the greater good or for the personal good? And those are the decisions that you're making. And it's very unusual to be forced to think like that during a game.
Very good. So, having not played it, I've done what we usually do, Ronan. I've dipped into Board Game Geek and picked up a random, normally negative comment. So here we go. This game is so boring. I just played it twice, but I can't say the mechanics don't help in getting involved in the story. The secret agendas affect the game story, and the players passing to get money and power get you nowhere. Instructions are not well written. And to actually start the game and play it, you have to go over 33 pages constantly for the first 2 games. What a disappointment.
So you just say one person didn't like it. I was something funny or an insight from there. All right, you didn't like it, mate. I think the rulebook was long. It was long, and I, lucky enough, had the promo set, which is what I did a video from, which helped me. But it's because I think they're trying to explain that there is a way this will resolve. There is a game here. They're almost trying to justify it in the rulebook, but it is a long rulebook. But it's not hard to learn at all, man. In fact, I didn't teach it. I just put it out, pulled a card, went, you're running a family, got people to choose their families, got people to choose their roles. So there you go. That's who you are for this game. Where am I going? No one knows. We're about to go follow a story. No one knows where it's going to go. Pulled out the first card. Right. What does everyone want to do? And obviously, I think it helped everyone sort of then start going, I don't know, let's go this, let's do that, let's do that. And that's the spirit that you have to play in, right? The one thing I will say about negative about the timeline is really screwy, in that you can sort of, I don't know, rescue a young boy from a situation, and that card then goes in the story deck, and 4 reigns of a monarch later, the young boy appears at court. So what? Hey? I'm not sure they got that bit fully sorted out, but as you're kind of guessing, the rest of it was pretty good. Sean, any final thoughts before I sum up so far on King's Dilemma?
Only that I own the game now. I'm desperate to get together enough people to play it regularly with, and I think when I was looking through those comments, this one was one of the rare negative comments. So that's why it wasn't as entertaining as maybe some of the others are, because it's actually gone over quite well. It's very high rating, and I'm looking forward to playing it, Ronan.
One of the best gaming experiences of 2019. I love it. So we need to say about King's Dilemma, it's fantastic. If you can get 5 people together, do it. It's really, really...
Cool.
And each individual game is less than an hour long, usually. So you can actually fire through a few scenarios in a quick burst that would be a normal gaming night and be like, hold on, we're 4 or 5 games in here. We're actually got some story going on. It's not slow and syrupy and, it is snappy turns. Snappy stories.
Talking about snappy, this is proper snappy because this is a game that we have reviewed in the past. It's a game that I constantly talk about. It was in my top 10 of all time, but they've done a second edition. So I just wanted to just go through some of the changes that they've made, and I've played a couple of games of it, Ronan. It's Eclipse, Second Dawn for the Galaxy, designed by Tuco Tacolilio and coming from lortapalet.fi. So, what do you know about the changes, Ronan? Are you excited? Are you not excited?
Yeah. What are the changes, Sean?
There's lots of changes, but so obviously there's a component change. There's lots. They've thrown a bit more miniatures at it, and comes with basically the ship pack 1, which was an addition that came separately in the old version. One of the main things that they've gone for is streamlining, Ronan, and I know that's something that you like in some of these longer, older games. They've streamlined, they've dropped a round off it. When you're battling other alien ships on planets, instead of having to do 2 actions, battle the ship, defeat it, and then on your next go claim the planet, you can immediately claim it. So it just speeds up things a little bit. And they've made some revisions to the balancing of the game, right? And that's the main things. And they've cured some of the problems. There was always the old problem where there was the one strategy, you just got a certain type of, I think, photon missiles or something. And
it was the glass cannon.
The glass cannon. They stacked up on those, Ronan, and it was a surefire way to win your battles, and whoever got the most of those the quicker was going to win the game. I think they've balanced that off a little bit.
Lovely. I mean, there's only 2 questions here, really, Sean, about the whole game. We know Eclipse. We know it's a fantastic game. It's in both our top 50s, maybe, or it might be just outside mine now. I don't know. And that's what's new. And I think what you've gone over is a bit of streamlining. Is there enough new in it?
They've fixed some of the problems, Ronan. There was a problem with when you had diplomatic relations with another player, you weren't allowed to move through their hexes or something, but now you can, and they've just eked it to make it a better game. The only thing that they've changed that I really don't like is they've added to the player elimination. So the only way to get eliminated from Eclipse, which I would never adhere to, I'd always give someone a starting tile somewhere else, was when you became bankrupt. Now, if all your ships are removed from the board, you are eliminated from the game. House rule, that is never going to happen in my house because I hate game elimination. And everything else is tweaked.
Eclipse can be a long game, man. If I get eliminated 90 minutes in, I'm not starting again. I'm just going to be behind the curve. I'm going to go read a book.
All right, optional elimination.
The only really, I love Eclipse. The only real issue for me here is, from what you're telling me, from what I've read, the changes don't necessarily warrant a whole new edition. There are people who have bought the first edition, have bought both expansions for it and a ship upgrade pack, and have invested a couple £100 in it. And now the new version, which is what everyone wants to play, will then cost them another hefty lump of money.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's a big investment.
So the question, why isn't there an upgrade kit?
That is something that I think is a valid question, and possibly there should have been an upgrade kit. I think it did come up in the Kickstarter campaign. Can't remember exactly what the reason they gave for not including it. I think another thing that they have included is the game trays. I know you're not fussed either way about game trays, but I think they make life so much easier. You just take out your tray and all your components are in it, and it helps you with your scoring. It holds your cubes. It holds everything for you. I absolutely love stuff like that.
Well worth another 80 quid then.
Absolutely.
Look, Eclipse is fantastic. Sure, if you don't have it, buy this version. If you have the old one, I'm really sorry. Okay, here's a funky little one which we discussed in our Essen treasure hunts. It's Vilnius from Austria Spieler, 2 to 3 player, 90-minute cooperative game coming from Malta Maineka. So the players are defending the city of Vilnius in the 14th century, which is being attacked by Teutonic knights. The way they're going to do that is by building up a grid of buildings which represents their sector of Vilnius that they're in charge of. They're going to recruit troops as well. Now, why are they recruiting troops? Because each round, as you're building up and spending cards out of your hand for money and to make buildings from a central pile of buildings and troops, you're going to have these enemy cards being drawn. They are going to build up a certain attack strength. As you build up your city, you build up a defense strength. Once the attack strength of the Teutonic Knights over a number of rounds builds up so that it's higher than your city's defense strength, an attack will take place. Now, you will know beforehand whether they're going to attack directly your part or the central area of Vilnius. If more than one of those columns of troops, everyone has their own column of troops coming to attack them, goes for Vilnius, they combine into a mass attack, and then you're kind of in big trouble. Each of the troops that are building up for the Teutonic Knights have got particular strengths and weaknesses, which are shown by icons. So therefore, as you recruit, you're looking to spend your resources in order to get specific troops to counteract those that are coming directly towards you. When the battle phase takes place, and again, it's not every round, it's only when the strength of the attackers is high enough, you combo off the cards against each other, looking to knock out as many of the troops as possible. Any that are remaining, if they're attacking your area of the city, will burn some of your buildings and you'll lose them. You'll lose units that you've used to combat other units. But also, when they're attacking Vilnius, those that are left over will damage Vilnius itself. And Vilnius has a set amount of health points. And if the health points of Vilnius ever goes below 0, then you've lost the game. If you survive all the attacks, then you've won the game. If during an attack you're strong enough to have remaining troops left, you can send them out to take control of provinces for you, which will bring certain province cards back into your hand, which will generate certain resources, which will trigger off certain buildings you've built, which will allow you to make more gold and get more resources to get more troops and better buildings. So you're constantly building up your area, it gets reduced, you're constantly building up your defences while the attackers build up, and they come in different waves, specific waves. Now, Sean, we talked about Vilnius. We said it was an ambitious sounding game with possibly not the biggest market in the world. Well, the first issue I have on it, Sean, is that there is a blatant lie on that box.
Go on then. What's the blatant lie?
It says English rules included. There is a pamphlet of English words under the title rulebook. To stretch that into the existence of a rulebook will be somewhat beyond my ability.
That was one of my points garnered from BGG was the rules could be more clear and easier to read. I was going to ask you about that.
They're
Obviously,
shocking.
they could.
Absolutely shocking. To the point where, once I worked out how to play, I went, this is not that complicated. This shouldn't have taken me 3 goes through to learn. I considered rewriting the rulebook, but then I realised that I'm really bad on details and that I definitely mess certain things up. So I decided not to. Writing a rulebook's not easy, but this one is how not to do it. Okay. One of the things that you notice when you start playing is that you do not have big strategic width you can do. When you're building the city, you start from a certain area and there are symbols and each building goes in a particular place. And as you're building along, you must build prior buildings to open up a symbol so you can place the next building. So you cannot put like a trading house down immediately. You must have a warehouse before you can get to a trading house. So everyone's grid is going to look very similar. There are slight things you can do to change it, but you're all going to be building a very similar looking city.
So Ronan, you're kind of going down a path where you're sounding like maybe every game is going to be the same, because if you get similar outcomes all the time, is every game going to go down that same path? Yes,
there's going to be similarities to each game, and also within that, I'm going to roll it in quick, is that because when you build up, certainly at least early on, you're going to lose buildings, so then you're building up the same buildings again, and then you lose some, and then you build the same buildings again. The actual process of building the city, again, the central mechanism, can feel repetitive from game to game, and also within the same game, the kind of replayability comes basically is the fact that there are different enemies coming each time. So each wave is a slightly different challenge. So you're going to be drafting in troops to face a particular challenge, not a generic one. So that's quite cool. But also you're drafting from a limited pool. So you're going to have to cooperate together within a system. The system is very tight to hold you all in. I guess, of course, to balance the game, because it's very much a Euro co-op. The theme isn't great. It's a load of beige cards. But yeah, so it swings and roundabouts. It's tight. It feels like it's well mechanically designed, but you're limited in what you can do.
So you're talking about, okay, so it's a co-op, okay. Now, it's a full information co-op, is that right?
Yes, you can see everything that's in front. They might not know exactly what's in your hand.
Right, okay. But sometimes with full information co-ops, you get an alpha player problem.
I don't allow alpha player problems.
I know you don't.
It's not an issue. It doesn't exist.
The one review, because I think one of the issues for this game, just to go off on a tangent, is there's only 58 marked as owned on Board Game Geek, only 9 ratings on Board Game Geek. This one has flown under the radar massively. One sort of slew of comments that I could drag out said that the alpha player problem is not a problem because the game is complicated enough that you have to keep track of all your own stuff and you can't be too worried about what everybody else is doing. You have to have, obviously, a grasp. What do you think?
The games don't have alpha player problems. Game groups do. This is I hate it. You know I hate us talking about alpha player problems. That's down to your game group. That's a human relations issue.
Okay, if you've have
got
a
lots
person
to
who
do,
is
to
inclined...
take from what you've said, you've got lots to do, lots to think about. It's quite hard to coordinate. Every hand of cards you're looking at, it's very tight. You're like, oh man, if I use that 1 gold there, I can't use it here. And you're thinking, can I risk not taking an archer now when these enemies are building up? So you've got plenty to think about. To try and run 2 hands of someone else's. I mean, if you're trying to do that, then you're not playing the game right anyway. But the point stands that yes, it will be harder to be thinking about all those things at once. It would be a very slow game if you're trying to do that.
Okay, all I've got now is it's quite a small game in that it doesn't take up a lot of real estate on the table. It's just cards, isn't it? So it's quite portable. You can take it down the pub sort of thing, maybe?
It's a small box. It's a small price. It's between £20 and £25 available in the UK. It does take up a bit of real estate, so I'm not sure about that one. It would probably fit in a normal-sized pub table, but there's definitely things sprawling around the place. You don't need a big table to play it, but it's not a small, tiny footprint game.
Cool. What are your final thoughts on Vilnius, Ronan?
My final thoughts are that it's an odd duck of a game, which is something that you look for. It feels different to everything else, so that's kind of a good thing. I think it's very brave of Osterspiel to publish a 2 to 3 player long co-op that basically all comes on beige cards. It's never going to be a huge market for that. I also found it really hard to find at Essen if it was even there. I was looking for it, I didn't see it anywhere, so I don't know quite what happened there. So it missed a chance of sort of a push. The mistakes have been made, specifically with the rule book and with the usability sometimes, but you can kind of give some leeway because it's such a tiny company. I think that Vilnius is really worth a try if you like the idea of a 90-minute, thinky, limited strategy, high on tactics co-op, where you have to play well. It's Euro, that is not luck on whether you're going to win or not, and you're going to lose a few times before you get any good at the game. So, small market, but I think well worth a poke in that market.
Very good, very good. On the other side of the scale, in that it's not a tiny little release that nobody knows about, is Nemesis. Designed by Adam Kwapinski and coming from Awaken Realms. Nemesis is effectively Aliens, the board game. So if you think about you waking up in from your hyperspace pod and you've been asleep and there's a body has been found that's been ripped apart, apparently, and alien leftovers are there, so you know that the ship has been invaded and overrun by the aliens. So your characters, and you've each got your own certain character with special abilities, is going to be given a secret mission. Well, you're going to be given 2 secret missions. One's a personal mission and one's a corporate mission. And you don't have to decide straight away. But what you do have to do is go and explore the ship and cover, because everything is hidden to you, and cover all the rooms. The only things that are apparent from the first glance are the engine room and the pilot's cockpit where they sit, and obviously the hibernation room that you wake up in. And it's all about exploring the room. There's a very similar noise mechanism as in Zombicide. So when you move in, you're creating noise and you're going to draw them to you. The only thing is the aliens don't start off on the board. They're going to jump out at you. And that leads to the atmosphere of the game. As I said about those private agendas that you have, at a certain stage in the game, you are going to have to decide what you're going to do. Now, these are things that you can say, the ship needs to end up in Mars, the ship needs to end up on Earth, the ship needs to blow up, the alien queen needs to be killed, and you have to destroy the nest, to a combination of some of those factors. You have to send a message is another one. So everyone is working to slightly different agendas that you don't really know what they're working towards, and you kind of have to guess as the game progresses. Ronan, I'll start off with the game is incredibly atmospheric because you are creeping through ship corridors, trying not to make noise, and occasionally aliens are going to jump out and frighten you.
I need you to clarify a question that's been burning in my parts. With regards to
in your
them.
parts?
Yeah. I'll tell you what parts. It could be anything. My fingertips. Who knows?
Who knows? Is
the atmosphere of this game, can you clarify for me? Because I keep getting different ideas. Is it aliens or alien?
It's not the one with Newt turning up and the cat and all that business. It's the first one where you are...
You could just say alien rather than use 29 words for that. So it's more the hunty, horror, leapy outy.
The hunty, horror, leapy outy. Exactly. That's it. Exactly.
You're not shooting off loads of bullets, Bill Paxton and all that.
Not really. You do run out of bullets quite quickly. Bullets are a very precious resource, and yeah, you're sneaking around.
Gollum there. I'm just gonna. I'm leaving it in. Precious. You've been playing this too often. There's Natalie beating you. Precious resource.
The thing is that if you move into a room with somebody else, you don't make any noise because they've obviously made the noise and. I don't know what the thematic reason for that is. That you're moving together, I don't know, and it doesn't make as much noise because you're not making two separate.
You're getting a piggyback.
You're getting a piggyback. There you go. So if you move into a room with somebody else, so it encourages you to a certain degree to follow each other at the beginning, but obviously you're going to have separate things that you want to do. And it's the room, so your room that you need to get to do one of your objectives might be the other, a complete opposite end. There's also the interlocking technical corridors that reverberate around the whole ship. So if I make noise in one part of the ship, if it's got a technical corridor and Natalie is in the other part of the ship and that's got a technical corridor, then I can actually alert aliens to her. It's quite funny sometimes.
That's mean.
That is mean.
Okay. With regards to that then, you're talking about highly rated, mate, for King's Dilemma. This has got ridiculously high ratings. It's in the top 40 already.
Yeah.
One of the complaints from people who haven't loved it as much, and obviously we have to play devil's advocate on the other side when we start thinking the other person loves the game, is player agency. In that while it might be an enjoyable experience, a lot of the times things are just happening to you and you're rolling along and then something else happens to you and you roll along and you're not necessarily directing what's going on. Thoughts on that?
I would say in the exploration phase of the game, when you are really just exploring the ship and seeing what turns up, I think, the only agency is, well, what direction do you go and do you stay together? I think once the ship is apparent and most of the rooms are available and you know what's going on, I think then it starts to become more of a choice of what do you do first? Do you give away your game, what you're trying to do? Do you set up bluffs? Like you can go into the cockpit or the bridge of the ship and maybe have a look and change the direction of the ship, but you might not care where the ship goes. Everyone else will think, oh no, they've changed it. I need to be going to Earth. I need to Earth. And so they're all rushing up there where you pop down the bottom of the ship and stuff like that. You're just setting up these little traps and being quite cute about how you do things.
So have you been playing co-op or semi-co-op?
We have been playing what the game says to play. Is the initial thing is the semi-co-op, Ronan, where we both have our absolute agendas and then you look at the end and see who's won the game, if anybody has won the game.
Okay.
So there's the definite winner.
That leads me on to two different things then.
Yeah.
I'll start with the semi-co-op. there has been some complaints about balance in missions and that people can have the win fall in their lap and others can be very difficult.
Correct.
Good. That's good.
Absolutely correct.
Second thing then is, and it's going to be hard for you to answer actually, I thought you'd be playing co-op just because you guys like to play games co-op. So this can only be brief thoughts. Any thoughts on it as a full co-op game?
I'm really enjoying the semi-co-op aspect of it, Ronan, and that's unusual for me because I don't really like semi-co-op games very much. I think they're neither fish nor fowl, as yourself and Natalie like to say. But I really enjoy just the mystique of it and the codding and the kidding and the pushing people in certain directions and not knowing exactly what somebody has. Yes, it can fall a bit flat if you both end up with the same mission pretty much, and it can fall a bit flat if one of your missions is a lot easier and completely ruins the other person's mission. So it's dependent on where the rooms are in the ship as well. And there are all of those problems, and I do agree with them, but I think the process is so good in this game that I forgive it.
Okay, last point I think before we finish off, Sean, have you got anything else to say, is it's not a cheap game. Again, that's okay. But there's a lot of plastic in there. And again, I guess since people have played it a lot, have said maybe a bit less plastic, a bit more variety in actual gameplay and more missions or enemies or something like that. They would have preferred that balance.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, we haven't really explored it to the point where we want that much variety. But yeah, I can certainly see that. I think if you've got the Kickstarter stuff that comes with extra missions and extra aliens to do different things. So if you were lucky enough to get on that campaign and had the money to get on that campaign because it wasn't cheap, then fair enough. But yeah, I think if you're buying from a retail, it could get a little bit samey for sure. But I think the mix of the rooms and they all go out randomly and things like that, I think that keeps it a little bit fresh.
Okay. So I have a stern complaint to make about you because I said quite clearly I didn't want us to cover this game before I'd played it. And I asked you to bring it down to me. You're the worst person I've ever known.
I will certainly bring it down to you. But I was running out of games, so I had to include it.
Okay. There's a lot to grapple with here. There's vibes that it's the best game ever, that obviously it's not the best game ever. I think that's going to come from any game where everyone seems to say at certain times it will fall flat, especially in semi-co-op. You and I, we said all along, have got different tolerance levels for games being amazing versus falling flat and where that balance lies. And I'm just going to need to play this a few times to find out where that balance is. I'm sure I'll have great games of it. I'm fairly sure I'll have flat games of it. Where it ends up is in the lap of the Nemesis gods.
Indeed. I think for you, Ronan, you will like it if your first game is a blockbuster. If it's not, I think you'll see the flaws immediately.
Oh no, yeah, I'm shallow. I'll just judge it on one game. No, I'm shallow. I hear that. I can hear the undertone of what you're saying, Sean.
Yeah, you hear that, bad boy. So incredibly atmospheric, lots of replayability. Love the player action mechanism, which we haven't really talked about, where your choices are made by spending cards that are also your choices. So you've got to be very, very mindful of what you're spending and what you're keeping, and if you've got enough cards to pay for them. Really love that mechanism. The game absolutely is fragile. I can't argue with that. You can have amazing games and you can have some that are not as exciting, but I really, really enjoy the process of playing the game. Just moving around the board and the tension of those aliens might popping up at any time. Even if there isn't a blockbuster finish, I'm a big fan of Nemesis.
Beautiful. Let's move on, shall we, to the Euro opposite of your flavoursome game. Glenmore 2. Fun Tales, designer Matthias Kramer, 2 to 4 players, 90 minutes. Sean, off the bat, there is something deeply, deeply wrong with me.
Are you going to complain about the theme of this?
There's something wrong with me. I've tried Isle of Skye. I've tried Clans of Caledonia.
Do you just not like Scottish people? Is that what it is?
I love Scotland. I like some Scottish people. I've got some Scottish family. Some of them are a bit angry. I've got a good mate at work who's Scottish. Don't make me do this. Don't make me justify myself. This particular weird 18th century Scottish theme that is so specific about sheep, wood, whiskey. I can't get on with it. I've tried, mate. I backed this on Kickstarter. I got it in full hope that the theme would be okay.
Normally you like wood and whiskey.
And cheap. Can't believe you left that on there. Don't like bagpipes. Can't get on with bagpipe. I'm sorry, man. I can't. I love Scotland, though. Many times I've been up there. Great crack. Been up there for rugby and everything. Right. It's a tile laying game where you collect sheep and wood and whiskey and stuff. Also scenery, and you collect personalities that let you play out disc on a supplementary board that give you special powers. And there's scoring 4 times throughout the game. The tiles are stacked in areas 1 to 4. And you're building up a little river in the middle and then little tiles around. And every time you lay a tile, it activates the tiles around it to give you resources. And then later on, you can exchange those resources for stuff. And there's a market you can buy and sell things. And you look and score points. And the way the scoring works is that there are 4 or 5 different categories. And you see who's got the least of each category, and you score compared to that. So you can produce whiskey in various ways. If Sean had no whiskey barrels, Rachel had 1, Natalie had 2, and I had 4. We would score points depending on how far ahead of the last person we are. You do it for whiskey, you do it for these scenario tiles, you do it for the personalities I said you can get, and there's a couple of other things as well. To me, that scoring all the way through forces me, anyway, middle of the road play. Because if I'm the one who's behind, I feel obliged to take something that I know is never going to score me points because I'm never going to get to be the first in it, but is preventing Sean from scoring points, which feels like a very negative move. So the scoring did not vibe with me.
But Ronan, I've not played the game. Does that mean that you have more things for the next round and you're in a better position? Does the game balance in that way at all?
No, really. I mean, you're taking these things as opposed to taking other things. So, say I took a personality. Okay. So the way it works, it's a round of tiles, and you choose how far ahead you jump, and you take that tile, and whoever's hindmost is the next person to go, and they can hoover up tiles in between and stuff, right? It's your favourite mechanism from Australia.
I was going to ask you about that, because it didn't work for me in Australia, but the mechanism itself, for some reason, doesn't seem as harsh in this one. Can you jump as far ahead in Australia? Because I found myself missing out on like 3-4 goes in Australia. Can you do that in Glenmore, or is it more condensed where you maybe miss your next go?
You could jump 15 goes ahead.
Right.
You can go as far around that track as you want to go, and then just wait. It depends how far everyone else behind you is jumping up. I like that mechanism. I like that mechanism in every game. I found it a bit wasted in my first couple of plays because I didn't really know what I was doing, so it was all a bit blurry. So I was like, I'll just take the next one because everything's kind of good.
Yeah.
And I'll take a personality, it's going to do me some good. I'll take this wood, I can use wood for stuff. So I was kind of doing that because the scoring is for everything and for nothing. I found it very hard to prioritize, but the mechanism itself I enjoyed. It was what I was doing with the mechanism that was an issue. And what they've done to balance the thing that you can be behind and just hoover up tiles is, at the end of the game, you see who's got fewest tiles in play, and then you lose points according to how many more tiles you have than that person.
Right, gotcha.
So it's forcing you to play small.
Is the problem that you are not... No, don't want to be me.
You're going to be though, right?
Really, yeah, I am. You're not really playing it very well, and you haven't really grasped how to get the most out of this. I don't know. You might have won every game you ever played of this, but the things that you're saying is you're not quite grasping like how to eke out those points.
Yeah, I haven't won. I haven't done terribly though. I think it's more the fact that I've disengaged. So the theme, the small play. Mm-hmm. The fact that it's hard to see your particular path through, that there's a spatial aspect to it, that you've got these clansmen that you get for various things, and they have to be adjacent to basically if you be able to play a tile. But you get loads of them, and you're forced to have a small board by the game, so they're always adjacent, and it just feels like a thing that's... And there's a lot in this game.
Not necessary, yeah.
Yeah, it's just... It's like the clan board is like that as well, whereby you take a personality. This is an addition for Glenmore 2. And there's a completely different side game where you pay a bit of money and move along and get a weird power, which is vaguely related to what you're doing as the main game, but not really. And
Have you played many of the Chronicles? Have you opened up many of those boxes and added stuff in?
Well, I've seen all the components for the Chronicles. Do you know why?
Okay. Because you had to put them all in the boxes?
Because all the fucking game comes with all the 8 Chronicles in the base game all completely mixed together with no guide of what's for what.
Oh, don't talk to me. I'm halfway through that process. It broke my heart so much I didn't go back to it.
That also, I'm going to have to say, mate, might be why I was disengaged from it. Because I got the game, hoping to start playing it. I had to go through that 2-hour-long stickering, getting things out, reading every single rule, both of the rulebook and of all the Chronicles, to work out what bits went with what.
Yeah.
I didn't get all the components. It's not a massive issue. They replaced it quickly. My box was split when it came. Again, they replaced that quickly. But that just added up to the fact that I was getting frustrated with this game before I even started.
So did you kickstart this?
I did kickstart it, yes. I got all the Chronicles, and they asked me whether I played any of them. No, I didn't. I played the base game, and then I was like, I should really try. And I looked at the first one. It's boat racing. So when you build your river, you can push your boats along the river to score extra points. And I was like, yeah, that's not exciting. So, all right, one thing, the bits are lovely. The quality of everything is great. Like, it's really well made.
It does look lovely in a Euro type way, in a very Euro Scottish wood whisking cheap way.
It's not an art style actually I enjoy, but it's well made. Put it that way.
The only thing really I've got left, Ronan, before you sum up is how well does it scale? Do you think it would be good for 2 players, or do you have to have like 3, 4, 5?
For the 2-player game, there's a dice, and the dice occupies a position on the track and you roll it. I think it's only 1, 2s or 3s that you can get. I could be wrong. But it jumps that many tiles forward and takes that tile. So it's a very simple AI dummy. It reminds me a bit of Architects of the West Kingdom dummy player, actually. That it just does the negative part of the game, the interaction part, and doesn't worry about the rest of it. I actually think that was quite clever. That is a good design choice. I like that.
Cool.
Okay. Glenmore 2. I can understand fully why someone would love this game. I really can. I can see that it's all there. But for me, it's like it ticks a personal checklist of pet hates, of unreasonable pet hates. The theme, the art style, the forced close scoring, the forced small itty-bitty play. I'm sure it's a fine game, and I dislike it intently.
You clown.
Speaking of disliking intensely, go on, bring us into the break with another one.
Okay, so this is one I have been playing for a long time. There are problems with the manufacturer of the game, some shady business practices. But Everdell is the game I want to talk about, and it's designed by James A. Wilson and coming from Starling Games. The whole spiel about the game is that you're in the Valley of Everdell, and we are the leaders of groups of critters who need to establish a new city, and we're going to do that by constructing buildings, meeting new characters, and hosting events. You're going to move through the 4 seasons, and the things that you can do are place a worker. Placing a worker is going to gather you materials, get you cards. The cards are your buildings and characters in the game, and other special actions. You can play one of those cards. You can build your city with a tableau of up to 15 cards played from your hand, or the meadow, which is a communal place where you can take cards from. And the last thing you can do is prepare for next season. Now, what that means is that not everybody is going to be in the same round of the game. Because if I linger a bit longer in summer, then Dan and Ronan could be in autumn already and moving along their game. So that was slightly different to me. So you start in this game, Ronan, with very, very few actions. And you feel at the beginning of the game that you're really not going to do much. But by the end, you ramp up, you're chaining things together, because buildings have critters linked to them that can be placed for free if you have that linked building, and some of your buildings in your tableau are going to do extra stuff, and it really does ramp up.
That's nice.
Is this all I'm going to get from you until the end when you have your rant?
Yeah, I told you, and you know well enough, we talked about this for a long time. I did not want to cover this game.
Right, I'm going to do a solo review.
You do a solo review of it. Whatever you want to say, you say. It's your podcast.
Ronan is morally outraged, which is fair enough. I kind of get it, but I wasn't going to cut off my nose with this one. So, lots of different ways to score points. You're going to score from your tableau. You're going to aim for basic achievements or aim for missions. What I really like about the game is the way that the mechanisms blend. The tableau building, your worker placement, your engine building, your set collection, and your card drafting. They all blend almost seamlessly together. And with that sort of almost Beatrix Potter style of artwork going on in the background, it feels very English. It feels very calming and countryside-y. Not a word, I know. Game can be luck dependent. Obviously, if you're going to look for partners for certain cards, whether they come out or not, it's a massive stack of cards. So that's something to consider. You're not always going to get the partner for your card, either to play it to your tableau or to achieve some of the missions that are available. The game looks stunning. There's a ridiculous tree on the board that is mostly superfluous to the game. You don't really need it. I suppose it does help you with elevating some of the things that you need to see, but that's about it. Other problem with the game is a very small iconography. We talked about it in Tang Garden. The actual pictures and the writing on the Everdell cards at the bottom that tell you what card they link to and what the powers do are very, very small indeed. And even the numbers of the cards, so they'll tell you there's 3 of these cards in a deck. That's really tiny. You have to search for that for quite some time. Talked about a huge deck of cards having a slightly negative connotation, but it also adds to the replayability of the game. It can frustrate, but the replayability is there in spades. For me, despite the problems with the publisher and the shady practices going on, I find Everdell to be a really, really good, gentle brain workout. Love the artwork. Always have great games of this. And we've got a new dog out there who obviously doesn't like Everdell quite as much as Ronan. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Everdell. I don't subscribe to the business practices of the publisher though. Ronan! Rant away.
But you do, because you bought the game and now you're covering it and saying it's great. So how can you not? I mean, we live in an age where someone can follow the wrong person on Twitter and get ostracised and called out, and people will start refusing to buy their stuff. And yet this person can have years and years and years of partners, customers, staff being mistreated. Just change the name of my company for the 6th time. And that's okay. Everyone will buy my games and no one will care. And it's ridiculous. I don't know where the limit is. We can, mistweet something. Oh, we'll ostracise you. They'll be up in arms. Treat dozens and dozens of people like dirt. I will buy your game because we like your game. There are hundreds of games. Play something else. No one needs to buy this man's games.
Okay. And on that bombshell, we are going to come back once I've recovered and stopped crying in the corner.
Yeah, you should be crying in the corner. Scumbag. Okay, second half. The quick half. Circle the Wagons from Quinner Games. 2-player game taking around 15 minutes. Designed by Stephen Aramini, Danny Devine and Paul Klucker. This has a paper-thin Western theme. It's an 18-card game in which one side of each card shows 4 different terrain types, possibly with items in each of those 4 squares. There's 6 different terrains in the game, but has 4 in each card. And the other side has a rule of how to score bonus VP, because at the end of the game, you're going to be scoring points for each individual space in your largest territories of each of the 6 different types, but also for the 3 different bonus rules which have been turned face up for this game. And to give you some idea, it causes much variety in the game, Sean. You've got the likes of Undiscovered, which will score you 6 points for each completely empty space that you've surrounded with cards. Target practice, so the symbols on there that I was talking about are all for scoring points. So in this case, for each row or column that you've created that has a gun in it and at least 1 beer, you're going to score points, bonuses for more beer bottles. Or Cool Water, which gives you 3 victory points for each wagon you have next to your largest area of water. So you can be drafting these cards and creating a grid, and there's tons of variety. Sean, straight away, a selling point in Circle the Wagons.
Okay, so I looked at some of the reviews and stuff on Geek Again, and that was one of the points that came up, Ronan, was the random goals. And some people quite liked them. It kept the game fresh, and because it was randomising and lots of different things coming out. But some people said that it made much of the game irrelevant, rather than providing interesting choices. You just had to go with the flow. Does that makes any sense to you?
No. What are they talking about? Because the goals come up at the beginning of the game. So you can see what you're going for. It's just like, says, okay, these are now more valuable. All right. Well, then I want to get more wagons. If wagons score me points, it gives you some direction to draft.
Right, okay.
I think that's nuts. So the way you do draft, Sean, is that all the remaining 15 cards get laid out in a circle, and you have a start card. Now, you can take that card, or you can take any other card further forward, but every single card you skip over gets put for free to your opponent before then they get to take their turn. So it does make some cards worth less, so that's fine. Give them to the other player. You don't have to take a card at any point. But are you giving them a way of scoring more points for having a larger territory, for example, and ignoring those bonus VPs? I don't think, I don't think there's an imbalance there. I think it leads to interesting choices.
Yeah, I can see that. I suppose if you really want something that's sort of 5 cards along, but your opponent needs something that's 2 cards along, maybe you jump to the 3, give him those 3, and then you've got 2 cards rather than the 1 when you do jump to that next one. So I can see some interesting choices there for sure.
And it's done in 15 minutes. And you add up your points and you just do your biggest area of each of the 6 territories. How well have you done on those cards? And bash, bush. It is a very, very quick 2-player game.
A lot of people are talking about a game that I've never played. I don't know if you've played it, Sprawlopolis. People are saying that they like this one. It's okay, but Sprawlopolis is the one that they would choose over this. Have you ever played Sprawlopolis?
No. Is that a single-player game?
Yeah, I think it might be.
Okay, so what would they choose if there's
drafting?
What would they choose if there's another person with them?
But I don't know much about the Circle of Wagons, Ronan. It certainly doesn't feel like it would be a pain to play this one, given that it's only sort of 10, 15 minutes. So certainly give it a go. Yeah, if it was any longer, I think it would become quite irritating with the randomness, and those choices wouldn't be quite so interesting. But in that short space of time, yeah, why not?
I don't get the randomness thing, honestly. There's no randomness in the game. You see how everything scores, and you see every card laid out. Once the setup is the setup, there's no random. So Those people are mad. Apparently also Sprawlopolis plays 1 to 4 players. Yeah,
so there you go. So play Sprawlopolis, people.
Well, you never played either of them. Are you trying to review a game you've never played? Oh, I thought it was no good. It's a perfect bar restaurant game. Circle the Wagons. I don't know what these people are talking about. It's literally no random. It's a fine little game. It's not innovative. That's the one thing I'd say against it. When you get it out, you're not going, oh, that's a brand new way of thinking of things. But it's interactive. It's varied. It's quick. It's smooth. I think it's a very good little 2-player game. Recommended. Circle the Wagons.
I actually do think it sounds like a really cool little game. So I definitely want to play it. So moving on to Cities Skylines, designed by Rustan Haakonsen, coming from Cosmos. And Cities Skylines, that's not going to happen many times in this game, is a polyominoes game of city building. You're going to build your cities and expand by opening new territory. While you're doing this, you have to balance the population and jobs. You have to balance your energy, your water, your refuse, your traffic, your crime and your oil, with the overall aim you're trying to make your population happy. The decks of cards that the building that you're going to draw to play the buildings come in as era 1, 2 and 3, and you've got access to all of them straight away. But the 3s, for instance, will cost you more to get into play than the 1s, but will be more beneficial to the game. So I suppose if you know and like computer games like SimCity, you're going to find some comfort initially in this one, Ronan. And I know you've played some of those games.
I have played some of those, and I think we say it quite often that the whole city building theme is very much an attractive one to us, and we've always been looking to recapture the feeling we got from that. I don't think it's possible in a board game, but that's not going to stop us from buying 30 of them in the next 10 years and trying. Okay. Sean, for what seems to be a relatively mechanically simple game, a lot of people are saying that the first 1 or 2 plays is very difficult. Some people seem to have given up at that stage, and others have forged onwards and said, actually, once I started realising that it didn't feel lucky anymore, and I did feel like I knew what I was doing, I then began enjoying the game more. Did you have the feeling? And if you did, why do you think it felt so hard to start with?
I didn't actually have that feeling at all, Ronan. I had quite the opposite. I did do a bit of research with the various playthroughs on YouTube. I think I looked at Slicker Drips and a few others, and so they gave me a feel for the game, and I think I was able to learn more by doing that and seeing it played than maybe just reading through the rule book. So maybe that's why.
Is that cheating? Is cheating too hard a word? Are you a bit of a cheat?
A bit of a cheat.
Double check.
It's a co-op. It's a co-op.
Cheating yourself only.
Yeah, okay. So we actually found it challenging, and we definitely had discussions throughout the game about things, but eventually we completely aced it. We were one step off having like the perfect city. So I think we need to actually make the game a little bit harder for ourselves. And it does come with modules that change it, make it harder, make it easier, and setups of the actual grid where the city goes out, make it more difficult. So I think, yeah, we probably would have to make it a little bit more difficult to answer your question, Ronan.
Seamless, Sean, because the next thing was Sam Geezer was banging on about put all the modules in. Does that make any sense to you? He said, well, see, to really enjoy it, he had to throw everything in, make it as hard as possible, and then he really started enjoying the game.
I wouldn't throw everything at once. We started with 2 of the modules. One of them was the ones that gives you a slight ongoing personal power, so sort of slightly asymmetric power. And the other one was unique buildings, so like sports stadiums and things like that, which are massive but get you lots of points. And we didn't really get on so much with the unique buildings. They didn't seem to change the game in any way other than they filled up the areas quicker and left us, probably made it a bit harder actually, if I'm honest, because left us less room for the basics like the police station, the fire station, the refuse transport, etc. The ongoing player powers, yeah, we like them, but it's not fundamental to the game. We haven't tried the other ones, but one of those is definitely going to make the game harder because it's the news headlines, I think, and it's going to make things happen to your city, like things are going to burn or blow away or things like that. So, yeah, it's going to be your choice of what you want to do. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. We didn't think it would be good to start off with that.
Okay. Another comment is that sometimes you can get set on rails and what you should be doing by the early draws, and your first few turns doesn't feel like you're making many choices. You're just dealing with what's been handed, and then you have to get into the game before you really get any choice of what to do. That
is my one issue, main issue with the game, Ronan, is there are certain buildings that you have to get. And you do, if you don't get them early, you are sort of doing, as you said, you're fishing. You're fishing for those cards to come out.
I think he actually mentioned that, yeah, you had to fish through for certain things.
Yeah, so there are, like as I mentioned, the fire station. You want the police station to drive down your crime. You want the transport to drive down and to keep like cars off the bus station, I think it's called, to keep the cars off the road and to keep the traffic down and your pollution down. So you're fishing through, and there's one in each of the decks. So there's one era 1, one era 2, and one era 3 of each of those things. So as I said, Ronan, you're definitely fishing for those for those main items in the deck.
I've got a question and then a quote to finish us off, if that's all right.
Lovely.
Is it worth, do you think, playing with more than 2 players? The general consensus was not.
It's not worth. I think you could do it, but I think it's absolutely fine with 2, and I don't think it's going to get any better with more players.
Okay, and I've got a comment for you. We couldn't go the whole episode without one. This is from OG Russ Hood, all right? His comment is... Now, this leads me more to questions about Russ Hood than it does about the game. 2020 top 250 nominee.
Right.
Suggesting...
Top 250.
He's going to do a top 250 of the year, but not just rank 250 of them, but also have more than that as nominees. How many games are you going to play this year? And who's got time to rank 250 of them?
1,000 games. I'm going to bring this 1,000 games down to a mere 250.
I didn't check his other comments to see if he's got like top 500 nominee, top 1,000 for the year. That's dedication. Right, City Skylines.
City Skylines, I think I went in wanting to like this one, Ronan, really want, because of my history with SimCity, etc. I do think it is a nice balance of trying to fit the polyominoes in the spaces given while making sure that certain tiles are adjacent or in the same region, and you need to keep an eye on all those tracks and make sure you're on top of things. I think it will end up getting a bit repetitive if I played this consistently. I think I'm going to play it once, maybe leave it a couple of months, come back to it, and I think I will enjoy it more by doing that. But in the microcosm of that one game, it is a really pleasurable experience, and we thoroughly enjoyed it, but it definitely has a shelf life, Ronan. Cities Skylines.
Beautiful. We're going to move on to one we have both played. It is Dungeon Degenerates from Goblin Co. 1 to 4 player. The playtime is 30 to 360 minutes. You'll see why that makes sense, because there's lots of variety you can do with this game. And it's from Sean Arberg and Eric Raddy. It's a fantasy game in which players start as prisoners in the capital city of a fantasy empire that I'm going to say, Sean, is like slightly BDSM, slight hints of Nazism to this evil empire.
Yeah, I think we're going to get onto that.
Okay. You beginning of every single game, there's a campaign, and your choices are going to dictate how long your campaign can be. But you are going to be offered a way to escape this dungeon, and you've got 4 routes to go. You can ignore this offer completely and just move on to a completely different start scenario where you're trying to do your own thing. Or you can go off and get this infected sorcerer's head. This is no spoilers, it's literally the first thing you read in the game. And dig it up, if you can, find it. And then, once you do that, it's going to give you 3 options of what you can do with this sorcerer's head once you've found it. But I won't give you those 3 options because that would be a spoiler. The way you do that, now, actually, should we talk about the whole Empire theme first and then go on to the mechanics of the game and get that out of the way? What do you reckon?
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so the whole theme of this and the setting is something that is being discussed by people who've played it, so we may as well address it. It's from the designer himself. He says it's got low-key, pervy sexuality, drug use, and it's based around the countercultural culture he was in as a teenager in the 70s in San Francisco. And a lot of, therefore, on their website, they sell stuff that's pentagrams, with marijuana-related paraphernalia, like just leaves and stuff, nothing major, like pen knives, pictures of Divine, who people of a certain age will remember is famous for eating something very unpleasant, sort of studded leather, and that art style comes through with the characters have got studded leather and skulls on them and iron crosses. People say that there's swastikas in there. I haven't seen any obvious swastikas, but there's suggestions of lightning bolts and stuff, which could be linked into SS. They're definitely hinting towards that. There's the old World War I era spiked German helmets. So there's a countercultural kind of kink going on, an aesthetic to this empire within the game, Sean, who have captured you.
Yes, I mean, I've seen what people are claiming are the swastikas, and I suppose they are swastikas. I think it's on one of the shields of one of the skeletons or something in the middle of the circle. There's a swastika. And so it led me to actually do a little bit of digging. So where this whole game and the art style comes from is a music magazine called Pork. And Pork regularly incorporated Nazi imagery until 2017, when they made a conscious decision not to do it anymore. Not because they felt like it was offensive, but they felt like the backlash with the arrival of Donald Trump and the nationalism in America, they felt like they were putting themselves in danger by doing so. Now, I looked a little bit deeper into it, and the reason for the Nazi imagery and the occasional swastika, etc., was about confronting fear. And it was his way of confronting fear, because Sean Arberg confronted the fear he converted to Judaism because he married his Jewish wife. And he said that it was about confronting the fear from obviously the Jewish and the Nazis, and also about mild provocation for the hard left. The crux of the matter is, I don't think he's glorifying Nazism or anything like that. I think he's just saying that it existed. I'm confronting it by putting it out there, and I don't think there's anything more untoward than that, Ronan.
Yeah, he was inspired to start doing this sort of thing, counterculture, when he read Gene Simmons' biography and gave up his day job and decided he was going to. Okay. I think personally, are you happy to play as Nazis in the game? Are you happy to play Memoir 44?
Well, yeah,
I think that's a lot more obvious to me than this sort of idea of this counterculture idea. So there you go. That's how I would address it. And the fact that they spell kill, K-I-L, sometimes deliberately, I find that actually more offensive. Okay. It's interesting, the response quickly in 2017, because I think you faced a time there, before that, previously, for people, again, I guess of a certain age, the idea that the far-right rise again was so ridiculous that it could almost be incorporated as a mild protest, and then it became a bit too real. And now it is a bit too real, and that's why you can't use it anymore. And I think it's interesting to note the timing of that and why they did it. And anyway, we'll move on and start talking about board games again, shall we?
Yeah, we went far too deep there, Ronan.
On your turn, as a party, you can choose to be together or split up. You're going to choose a stance, and the stance you choose is either going to be to go slow and careful and looking to avoid danger, or to go fast so you can move quicker and have the option to almost try and invite danger towards you if you want more of an encounter in order to sort of trigger more and get more XP and if you're feeling particularly tough. Now, Sean, the first thing you're going to do is decide how you want to move on the map most of the times, unless you want to rest. That map is atrocious.
It's very hard, even just putting out some of the key elements, like you got to know where key things are on the board to place things on the board. Just finding them is absolute bum-ache. It's terrible. It is a really busy. I mean, this is going away from the art style, okay? So you either hate or love the art style. I think it is a Marmite
or just
art
ambivalent,
style.
as I am.
No, I don't. I started off hating it, thinking that's the worst thing I've ever seen, but I've kind of grown to love it because it's just so bad, it's lovable. So I've changed my mind on it. But yeah, the map is really busy and really awkward to find things on it, and it doesn't help the gameplay at all.
Which one's a road, which one's a path? Because there's two different rules for them.
Exactly, yeah.
Can't tell. I don't. It's very... Played it several times, just about beginning to work out which is which. Leading on to which, the rule book, not great. After we each had played our first game separately, we had a chat and corrected each other on certain rules, I think, that we'd been getting.
Oh, mate, that was painful trying to learn that. I was not happy learning from that rule book.
I didn't find it as bad as you did, but I certainly was getting frustrated with it. And I printed stuff off the internet to try and help, and still, 5 games in, there are cases where I'm going back and going, this is really hard to find any reference to anything here.
Definitely.
The other thing you do, if you choose not to move across the map, is to rest. When you rest, you can recover your health, your morale. Everyone's got a certain set of stats. It depends on which character you choose to be, what their stats are. You can get hit by monsters, as you'd expect in the game, during the encounter phase and lose health. If you all lose health at once, you'd have lost as a party. You can also, where you are, explore the area by passing a test. All tests are a 2d6 roll against your stat for whatever it is, and all the characters have got different stats. Exploring makes it's persistent throughout the campaign. It makes moving easier, and it makes certain events less likely, bad events less likely to happen to you if you've explored an area and you know it. You can spend XP that you've gathered from encounters in order to upgrade. And you can upgrade either kit by trading as well, but you can also upgrade skills you have. You start with certain skills, and there are others available to you. Each character type has got a certain set of traits. There might be a barbarian, a performer, or a magic user, whatever it might be, and certain skills will be available to you. And you have freedom there for what you wish to choose, and each skill is upgradable, which will also cost you your XP. Or you could, even if you're in a town as well as trading, you can invest in that town and make that town more viable and more secure. The reason you might want to do that is because every space on the board, if it's a settlement that's got a town level, which means it's kind of safer, you can't get monsters there and you can trade, or a danger level, at the end of each turn, whether you've rested or moved, you're going to draw an encounter card. The encounter card will have a danger level on it, and if it's lower or equal to the danger level of where you are, and certain areas of the board are more dangerous than others, then you are going to have to face the encounter. The other thing it will do is it will push up the danger level in one space on the board. Now, when you have that encounter, there are story points where you can make choices, or quite often there are monsters which will come out of the deck to attack you, and they work in different ways, and they have work in different powers. Sean, those encounters are very varied.
They're incredibly varied, but one thing, just to go back to that map, you're never quite sure what region you are in. You're like, am I in that region or
I thought the region was okay with the colours.
Was it? I had a couple of times I was like, I'm not sure where I am.
I think the orangey one at the top blends a bit. I think you might be right.
Yeah, with the purpley and the orangey and stuff, yeah. But yeah, they are incredibly varied. You never know. It could be a sex dwarf or it could be something else. The sex dwarf leapt to mind for some reason. Yeah, incredibly varied.
Yes, there's a ton of content. So as well as there being like these different encounters, you've also got different characters, and they play differently mechanically, and you have to use them differently. There are different upgrades to the same character. You can upgrade differently from campaign to campaign. There are different stories that you go through, so every choice you make will open up a branching campaign within it. Now, as you hit a story point, you'll move on from campaign to campaign via the choices you make. These campaigns can be... We did one that was 2 missions long. That was the whole campaign. We did something, we did the next step. I know 3, my fairness, 3 missions long, and that was it. We'd come to a conclusion for this world, and something had happened. It had been taken over by a mad parrot god. Okay, and basically made everyone high on acid. That happened. Some of the campaigns will be 10 missions long. And the variety, Sean, you're right, in terms of lore, for the base game only, is really fantastic. It's sort of something a lot of games could learn from, I would say.
Okay, so my caveat to that, Ronan, is... where that's all brilliant and it's entertaining, the actual mechanisms in which you are achieving this are quite repetitive. You're going through the same steps over and over and over again. And I suppose you could apply that to most sort of dungeon crawler-esque games, but it just felt a little bit at odds with the sort of brilliant storytelling on one side and the constantly doing the same thing over and over again on the other side.
I'm going to leave the combat mechanism alone for a minute, for the fact that you're just choosing rest or move, draw a card, rest or move, draw a card. It's a story game. It really... Now, there are mechanisms in there, and there's more to it than that, and you're making choices, but it is a game to play for the story, and that's what you're here for.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair dues.
Okay.
And you were going to go on to the combat mechanism there.
I think it's really clever.
Confusing, but clever.
I know. I don't think it's that confusing, but you're not the only person I know that struggled with it. Rachel, we struggled with it, but I picked it up really quickly, and that's not, it's just whatever. It clicked in our brains.
Yeah, you're just calling us stupid, aren't you?
Well, you, not her. I'll never call her. I live with her. I live with you. This is really scary. Okay. The way the combat works is that you choose a stance, attack, or defense, and the monsters have got different people they'll go to. They each have like highest morale or highest influence or lowest of this and that, and they all have special powers as well, so they'll cause things to happen at the beginning of a fight. Or if something happens in the fight, they'll trigger off, maybe they'll summon another thing, or they'll reduce some of your powers somehow. And it all links into how you play, and you're choosing defensive or attacking. You're choosing to attack each other's because they've gone after a certain person, someone's overloaded. And I found each combat, compared to the depth of mechanisms, I'm going to say like maybe the Ravenloft system, the combat in this was much deeper than it was for me in that.
You certainly have more agency in the combat, and you're thinking about it could go either way. It's not just if I roll this exact amount, then I'm going to kill it or what have you. So yeah, the combat is interesting. It just took me a while to sort of grok it. That was my own thing.
I like that your gears and skills, your choices really, really influence how the combat goes, and that each hero feels different, and you have to think about how you're setting yourself up for combat. So Rachel and I breezed through our first campaign. We happened to have 2 characters. She had a magic user. When she went defensive at the beginning of each fight and built up a shield that absorbed damage. And then once that could absorb the damage, she went on the offensive and did big damage. I had a sort of arena gladiator character who was good offensively. Then if I was taking some damage, I go back in defensive stance, but still had a glove that I could attack with when there's defensive, which is unusual. The second set of characters we got out for a second campaign didn't have such good powers. And we thought this game is really easy, just breeze through it. And we got mushed in the first game because we've been breezing around thinking we could beat everything up. And we realised we can't play these heroes the way we played those other 2 heroes. We're going to have to think more about what we're doing. And that, again, opened up a different aspect of the game to me.
So would you say that there are almost beginner level heroes and more sort of experience level heroes?
I think, yeah, there's some that are certainly more obvious in how you use them. You run in and punch them in the face and you can use them either way. But I think just explore it, because this isn't a game about winning and losing. It's a game about the story. I can only go back to that, Sean. Any final thoughts for us on Dungeon Degenerates?
Not really. I'm not going to comment any further because I haven't really explored the game enough to be able to do that. But I'm interested to hear your final thoughts on the game, Ronan.
I think it's a bit rough. I think part of that is deliberate. It's a design and aesthetic choice. But actually, rulebook and mechanically wise and presentation is a bit rough as well. But I found it to be a big hit because it was so quick to play. We got adventures done in, once we knew the game, 60 to 90 minutes for every one. A campaign right between 3 and 10. So again, it's another game you're not spending years and years of your life to play through. You're discovering the story, lots of branching things. There's lots of content available now. It's quite pricey to get all that content, so be aware of it. You're not getting top-notch components by any means, but I think you are getting top-notch story and content. And I recommend Dungeon Degenerates as long as the aesthetic is not in any way going to displease you.
Very good. Okay, so we're going to move on to DC deck building game Rebirth. Now, I really want to skip on through this one because a lot of the mechanisms are very, very similar, if not exactly the same, to the DC deck builder. In DC Deck Builder, you've just got a selection of villain cards, equipments, heroes, etc. that you're trying to bring into your tableau to defeat the supervillains once you get enough power from your hand. This game is very, very similar, but the difference is that you are going to add locations that are in play permanently and not just ones that you play from your deck, and you bring in movement into the game. So what you're going to do is move around this circle of locations and other cards that you can get. So if you land on a card, you can then pay for that card in the same way you would in DC Deck Builder and bring it into your hand. If you land on a location, it's going to give you a power that location supplies. The locations also supply bits of equipment that are there in multiple. So instead of having the kick cards that you do in DC Deck Builder, where they're just a big stack of them and you can always go to them if you don't really have any other options, these bring in like the bat signal, and there's the bat bike, and flight is in there as well. So you're moving around, and eventually a supervillain's going to come out, and they're going to start moving towards certain buildings and trying to destroy the buildings, and you've got to use various methods to stop them. If you land on the same space, they can't move any further, but obviously they're going to damage you rather than everybody else when they attack, and you're trying to protect the city and defeat the supervillains, and you've got a certain amount of time to do that. Every time you defeat a supervillain, a little tracker moves up and it changes slightly the way the game plays, makes it a bit more difficult for you to play. Ronan, that is effectively Rebirth. Have you looked into this at all? You're not. I don't know if you're a big fan of DC Deck Builder, are you?
Yeah, I quite like it. I think it's a good game. But
just to jump in quickly, Ronan, yeah, I was watching the Dice Tower Top 10 yesterday about Tom Vassel's Top 10 DC games. And when DC Deck Builder came out, you'll remember, he absolutely despised it. It was number 6. He's cooled on it. He's fine with it now.
Okay.
Just random, because I always used to lament that how much he hated it, and I always thought, that's so wrong. It's a really good game. But yeah. Anyway, I digress. Off you go.
But the reason that I liked it, Sean, is that, and maybe this is what Tom has come around to thinking, is that it's so quick that it was a seamless game. You felt like you're making some decisions. All the subsequent content that they've brought out has added more onto it, which I didn't necessarily feel added anything that great and was just slowing down the game. Here again in Rebirth, they've added more into the game. So that really is the key question to me. Have they slowed down the game because its speed and its lightness was what attracted me to it, or have they added to the game?
They have certainly not added to it, Ronan.
Oh,
the movement aspect is just boring, cumbersome. So, as I touched on, sometimes you get a hero to block a villain character from getting to a location. So then that villain's going to attack that hero. Now, that hero might be just stuck there taking damage without getting any cards into their tableau because they're just there as a block effectively. And then you've got to do that in times in the game because you don't want them to get to the buildings and start damaging the buildings. And that's very boring for that character because you're just there getting hit, especially early in the game when you can't actually hit back because you don't have the deck to do it. It just doesn't go well. And also, Ronan, some of the cards in this one are just not very well thought out at all. Some cheap cards, a cost of 2, are way better and obviously better than maybe like a 5 or a 6. It just doesn't do the job that I want of DC Deck Builder.
Wow. Can they get any extra content of this right? I remember playing the Batman versus Joker 2 players, like one of the first extensions they did, and it was terrible. I was like, they got these decks wrong. Who have they got designing these games? Like, they had a good design to start with. They're letting loose, I don't know, what's on this whole system.
I've got the Batman vs Joker, but the one I played was Green Lantern against Sinestro. And, you know, I'm a big Green Lantern fan. I was desperate to like it, and I had to admit it wasn't very good. They're not really beyond the standalone boxes of just DC Deck Builder. You had Teen Titans, you had Villains, and you had, I can't remember the other one, but you had four versions of the same game effectively. Beyond that, I think everything else is just a noise and faff that you just don't need.
Okay, Rebirth, avoid.
Avoid, yeah, it's not great.
Okay, one game we're going to revisit here, and then 3 crowdfunding games to talk about, and we're out of here. And the last one that we've played we're going to revisit is Elysium from Space Cowboys. 2 to 4 player game taking 60 minutes from Matthew Dunson and Brett J. Gilbert. It has got a Greek god theme. At the beginning of the game, you're going to choose 5 out of 8 Greek gods, shuffle all those cards into a deck, and lay out some cards player number dependent. You're going to be drafting cards through each round into your own area, but your goal is to move those cards from your area you've got down into the afterlife and make legends with them, because that's the only way they're going to score. In terms of drafting, you have 4 columns. They're each a different colour, and cards require you to have certain colours of columns available to you in order to draft them, because every round you're going to have to remove one of the columns from your pools, reducing the amount of options you have. Sean, straight from the bat, and the main sort of hinge of Elysium is that tough decision. When the round opens up, it's easy. You can take any card that you like. As soon as you remove a column, you are making certain cards available only to your opponents and not available to you, making their decisions slightly easier if they go later in the round, but then of course they don't have first dibs on which cards to take. And it is an almost unique and very interesting decision to make.
So, Ronan, I've got a confession. I don't remember playing Elysium. I know I've played it, because I remember the act of playing it, but I don't remember anything about it. I was looking at this, I'm sure I've played this, because I remember Natalie liked it, I remember you liked it, and I remember I really liked it, and I played it a few times. It's gone. It's gone from my head.
You borrowed it from me for about 2 years.
Yeah, no, I didn't play it, I just borrowed it.
Okay.
Gave it back unplayed, but I played it a good few times with you. I remember in the early days of the pit when we reviewed it, I remember you bringing it round 3 or 4 times to my old heart place in London, and I remember really enjoying it, and I can't remember it.
Okay.
I'm worried.
I'll keep going through the mechanisms then, and hopefully this will jog your memory and you'll have some questions. Trust me, that is a tough decision. I thought I was going to get some feedback on that one. Okay. As well as drafting the cards, there's a set of what's called quests. And they are set out and they all require you to have a particular column left in order to take them, which again feeds into that decision. The reason you're getting these quests is it will set turn order for the next turn and from halfway through this onwards. And also it will give you a certain income in gold, in points, and in how many moves you can make into your legends into the afterlife. Now, the reason that you need gold is because after this drafting of quests and cards, everyone then gets to move their cards down to their legends, but every move is going to cost you gold. So you're always looking for ways of making money, and that's one of the things these cards can give you. They're going to give you actions you can take per round. They're going to give you synergies. They're going to give you one-off. Some of them gives you attacks against other players. Some of them give you an income. Sometimes you want cards of the same god because they trigger off each other. Sometimes you don't. Depending upon what's come out and how you've built the deck and which gods and goddesses you've used, there are going to be different strategies open to you. And of course, as it goes through, that's what gives you variety. Now, the reason you're moving down to these legends is you're trying to make up sets. And you can either make sets of the same colour, there are numbers 1, 2 and 3 in each colour, or you're making sets of the same number, so you want as many as you can of the 5 different coloured 1s and 5 different coloured 2s, and again the colours depend on the gods that you've put in play. The first person to make big sets is going to get set bonuses for doing that. And that's one of the ways, again, in which you're going to interact. You're going to be looking at each other, deciding, because you can get caught in sort of a puzzle, solitaire world where you're just looking at what you're doing. But the set bonuses are quite important for scoring. So as well as looking at what cards will work for other people, you're looking at what they are actually moving down into their legends and whether you can nip ahead of them in order to score a few points. You reset the draft each round. You play over 5 rounds and you add up your VP at the end for having those sets at the bottom, for having set bonuses. And depending if you've got Ares, God of War, there's also another way where you're trying to score prestige points during the game. And the most prestige points will score a certain number of points, and the second most number of points, and so on. Sean, believe me when I tell you, it is a purely tactical game and you have to embrace that. You can try and think of a way you're going to score points. But the fact is that this deck of cards is big and not all the cards are going to come out and you're not going to get access to all the cards that you want. You're going to have to roll with what becomes available, adjust to what you've been doing, and scraping together points here and there to just nip ahead of each other. It's very quick. It's very nip and tuck.
So I remember the choosing. Is it 8 decks of cards that you play? You choose 5, or is it 7?
Yeah, you do choosing 5 out of 8 decks.
I remember some of those that are playing very differently. You've touched on one of them with different scoring there, but I remember them all playing quite differently, but all having that sort of variety as you talked about. And is that something that's going to keep the game going for you? Because you've obviously brought it back into your rotation after a long time, Ronan. And did it feel fresh? And did you feel like you've got more life in this to come?
Yeah, the gods are very much themed down their own path. So Hephaestus, for example, the Smith of the Gods, he brings lots of money into the game when his cards trigger for each other. For Poseidon, he causes lots of disasters, so you can attack the other players and steal points and stuff from them. Athena will give you stuff, but give the other players stuff. And there's actually recommended setups within there that says, play with these 5 gods, you'll have a more money game. Play with these 5 gods, it will be a really mean game. Play with these 5 gods, you'll all be working together. So it's nice that they also give you the idea of the sets. Now, those combinations are not endless. The gods don't necessarily combine that much with each other. So it's just what gods are in there, not how the gods combine quite often, that sets the feeling for each individual game. Now, this is part of my idea to get games that I liked in the past, that I haven't played enough, to come back in, so I have a set of them and I play them again. And this one we played, and then we wanted to play it again, and we wanted to play it again, and it didn't feel like a chore, like it sometimes does. You're like, I should play the games on my collection more often. This one we really wanted to play more, and I hope that these plays will mean that it is in circulation again, because it really, really stood up when we got it back out. Having remembered enjoying it, yeah, we're still loving it.
So I remember when this one and Deus were on sale in Aircon, and I did see a lot of people picking it up and playing it because of that reason, and it was getting a lot of buzz. A lot of people were saying, actually, I wasn't expecting it, but that's a really good game. And I remember at the time, Ronan, you thought when we first started playing this that there was a lot of scope for expansions. Now, I know that there are some expansions coming out, aren't there, or just come out, but not the scale in which you thought that this really could be expanded.
You've got me there, mate. Are there expansions out, are there?
I think now I've got to check. Hang on.
Now I've got to check. Don't throw those things at me out of nowhere. Well, I think the scope for expansions was obvious because all you have to do is throw in more gods. There's none available. I can tell you that much. Whether there's none announced, which is a shame. And I'm not sure this game ever got the sort of the audience or the support that it deserved, because it's very quick playing. It's very thinky. It's relatively easy to learn, and it really has got everything in an hour-long Euro that you could want. What can I say, Sean? It's a big one.
That was the point. Maybe it's Deus that they've brought out expansions for. But yeah, I'm just looking at the first thread on Board Game Geek. Let's convince Space Car Voice to publish an expansion to Elysium. Let's do that. I remember enjoying the game enough to want to play it again with you and refresh my memory. And you're obviously a big fan of it, so come on, Space Cowboys. Get some expansions.
I'm sure our influence will lead their business strategy. Okay.
They'll be scrabbling right now.
I'm sure they will. To get away from us. Lead us into 3 Kickstarter games, Sean. Fire off with this tiny little campaign.
Yeah, very quickly, tiny little game, not worth mentioning. We have the follow-on to Gloomhaven, which is Frosthaven. And while I'm talking, I think it's around about approaching the £7 million mark. So it's well into the $7 million mark. I think it's kind of plateaued. I think it's going to stay there, but still, that's a hell of a lot of money for a board game to make. I've had a quick look at it, and to be honest, I don't think there's a lot of difference in terms of the mechanics and the way the game is set up and the look of the game from Gloomhaven. I think they're going to play very similar. There's obviously going to be tweaks in there, and there's obviously going to be story differences.
I think the main changes they're focusing on, Sean, apparently there's going to be more non-combat things going on. There's going to be mysteries, which you're going to have to solve to unlock things. There's going to be a sense of seasons, in that the winter will come and it'll be harder to do certain things. You might have to wait for things to unfreeze before you can go and do them. Also, you're going to start, rather than a city that's fully developed, in a little village. And apparently the party can be able to make choices as to what gets built and how the village develops, and that will affect what scenarios are available during the campaign. So I think he's trying to make it even more into a living, breathing world you can influence, rather than being, it already was quite like that.
But in terms of buying it for myself, although I'm really tempted, because FOMO, I think it would be crazy to spend that sort of money on a sequel to a game that I've barely touched the surface of. I've played maybe 3 or 4 games of Gloomhaven, and I've forgotten how to play it, so I'll have to relearn it all again. And I think for once common sense prevails, and I'm going to stay back. Ronan, yourself?
One thing I'll say, Sean, that again, players of a certain age are going to be really thinking Icewind Dale when they see this. Gloomhaven to Frosthaven, Baldur's Gate to Icewind Dale. That's what it triggered in me anyway. I played 25 games of the longest Gloomhaven campaign I did, and it kind of stalled. Mostly my fault, I'll say, when work got really busy and other stuff. And also I think because we retired our characters and we loved our first characters and none of us loved our second characters. So 25 games, you'd think that would be a decent investment into anything. But for Gloomhaven, obviously, it's not brushing the surface, but it's not fully delving in. So I too was double thinking it. Well, shall I, shan't I? And then Puria just went, I've backed it, lads. I've got it. Don't worry about it. So I don't have to make the choice. I'm going to get to play it. Well, hey!
God bless him. Because he's going to have loads of time to play it.
Okay. Veil Wraith is the next Kickstarter campaign I thought we'd have a quick discussion about. It's from Hall or Nothing Games. Designers Tristan Hall. 30 minutes long. It is a solo player game only. The world has been destroyed by the Archfiend, and you are the Veil Wraith, and you're going to be going through 5 scenarios in a campaign trying to defeat foes in order to win through in the end. And the way you're going to do that is in each scenario, you're going to have to find 5 keys and then activate a portal and stay away from the Archfiend, because if he ever finds you, you have lost. For each of the scenarios, you're going to make a stack of a threat deck with 5 keys put through it, like in Pandemic style, with sometimes specific enemies with the keys, sometimes other enemies, but each scenario's got its own specific threat deck that you build up. On your turn, you've got 3 actions you can do. Now, you're going to use one of your things to power up one of those actions, and one of your things is going to use one of those actions. They are all underneath a 1, 2, or 3 power marker, which means they've got power 1, 2, or 3, depending upon where they are. But the powering up issue is where you put power tokens on it to make it more powerful in its position. When you activate one of your powers, you move it back to position 1 so that it is now at its weakest again. So you're going to be looking at some way to rotate the 3 different powers. What are you going to be doing with them? Well, these threats come out each turn from that specific threat deck, and they all have an influence or fight value on them. And basically 2 of your actions are either to influence or to fight in order to get rid of one of the threats that's facing you currently, as long as your score is high enough. The last one is to explore, and the explore power that you use has to be high enough to take any key that has come out of the deck into the threat area. And like I say, you need to collect those 5 keys, get to the portal and get through in order to win each scenario. The other sort of cards you've got are called memories. Now, those are special powers. You get to draw 1 each turn. You can play as many as you want each turn, though. So you can build up, and they will allow you to break the rules in some way and boost what it is that you're trying to do. Any threats that are left in the threat area at the end of the turn are going to attack your spirit, which is more or less your health. If your spirit ever gets to 0, as well as if the Archfiend finds you, as I said, you'll have lost the game of Valwraith. If you get through all 5 scenarios, you'll have won the campaign. Sean, Valwraith, All or Nothing. We know that their games look gorgeous. This has gone in a slightly different artwork style in that it's all black and white, but still that distinctive, really nice style.
The games do always look amazing, but going back to those games, Ronan, just All or Nothing Productions themselves haven't really done it so far for me, Ronan. The Gloom of, or yourself, I don't think. Gloom of Kilforth, a game I'm really interested in. Eventually I obtained a copy, and it was very faffy. The mechanisms didn't marry up, and I didn't play test it a great deal. I played one game and I just decided I didn't like it and I traded it on. You had issues with 1066 Tears to Many Mothers, which you've documented on our show, and I've heard very, very hit and miss reports about Lifeform, which is their version of like Nemesis Alien style ship in space game. So I'm a bit tentative about any game coming from All or Nothing Productions at the moment, Ronan.
Yeah, I also am tentative, mate. You're right. I think they do a lot of things right in terms of production rather than get the actual good game, which is unfortunate, which is why I think a solo game is the easiest sort of game to design, to get right, as long as you can unlock the magic of fun. Because it's got a low price point, because I do get to play those solo games on nights, I am sniffing at this. There's also an expansion available with it, which pushes the price up a bit. I feel like if I wanted to get it, I'd probably get it with the expansion. So I am teetering on the brink. As of recording, there's 3 weeks left. There's probably about 2 weeks left when this comes out. So I've got time to have a look. I've read the rulebook, as you can tell. I know the rules. I'm quite interested. And basically, it's going to be how much money have I got left at the end of the month, whether I take a plunge in this or not. I'm an on the brinker.
I probably would never play it, Ronan, but yeah, I would look forward to hearing if you do get it and seeing what it's like. Last night, I texted Ronan to alert him that there is an expansion for one of his favourite games of all time, Lords of Vegas, isn't there, Ronan?
Yeah, on Kickstarter. There's not just an expansion, there's a reprint. There's a reprint of the hard-to-get Up expansion, and then there's this new Underworld expansion because the designers have got the rights for the game back. And Sean, there was only one reason you'd have texted me that.
Because I wanted you to buy the massive case version.
What a version comes in a briefcase, we can fit everything in, that comes with some poker chips. $250.
Bargain.
Have you got it for me yet?
Have you got it for me yet?
Right, let's do this quickly. Lords of Vegas is amazing. I already have Up. I didn't love it. It added up to 2 more players above the 4. Didn't think that was a great idea. I didn't think the game could cope with it. So they're going about Up is an amazing expansion. Of course they are. I'm not so sure. The decorative case, and in fact a lot of things to do with this, are very loosey-goosey. They haven't come out with this. I don't think they've done this Kickstarter at the right time in lots of different ways, and including in the process of how along the line of production they are. They don't really know what the briefcase looks like. No. These poker chips, they have an idea, but they can't tell you what they look like. There are these bags that they're going to include, not final design.
Yeah, they're all renders. This is how it may look.
Even the box. The box may look like this. The normal box, never mind the fancy one. If this wasn't from Lords of Vegas, you'd be like, this is really shady. You'd be checking some links and making sure someone hadn't stolen artwork from somewhere else. Don't think the campaign is being run very well in terms of that. You have to have something more solid than just, maybe this, maybe that. Here's maybe some poker chips. And no one's paying $250 for some poker chips they've never seen before. They reckon their plastic and metal design will last longer than clays. Well, the clays were working great. People like the clays. Whatever. In terms of the actual expansion itself, it's Underworld. It's a bunch of, I think it's 50 cards. You can print and play them and see what they're like. And they just get laid out. There's 3 or 4 of them. And on your turn, you can spend money to buy a card and do a special action. That's interesting enough to me. Unfortunately, for that one little deck of cards, again, it's something like $29. And in my head, given I'm going to have to pay shipping on that as well, it comes in a small box. I'm going to pick that up in the shops here if it comes out. And if it doesn't, that's fine. Lords of Vegas base game is a fine game by itself. I think they need to revisit how they're doing this campaign.
Yeah, it doesn't look particularly professional. It sounds great having this case with all the components, and they even don't know what they're going to use. They're toying with the idea of cars as to mark off the lots. That's
right. Yeah. We're going to change the tiddlywinks. We don't know what they are. Maybe cars. We'll decide what they are, and then I might pay you.
Yeah, strange thing. I still thought you'd have bought it, you'd have backed it, just sort of like click, whatever.
I'm not you.
True, this is true. Right, I think that's brought us to the end of another show and another pit spit, Ronan.
Jolly good. Thank you, Sean, for your insight and wisdom, and thank you, everyone, for joining us.
No, you're just mocking me. Yes, and thank you, Ronan, and of course, thank you, everyone. And of course, we are proud members of the Dice Tower Network. Go there on the Dice Tower itself for gaming goodness galore. If you wish to download our episodes, we're on Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, and Spotify. We also have our YouTube channel where there are pit stop videos available, but we have now moved to the Dice Tower YouTube channel for those, so catch our pit stop videos there. We are on social media. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page, and we, of course, have a Twitter page. We are at Game Pit Podcast. If you wish to contact us, please send any questions you have about the show, and we'll try and answer them to thegamepitpodcast@gmail.com, or pop along to our Board Game Geek Guild, and we're happy to answer questions there. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time on The Game Pit. Music by E. Aaron.
Oh.